informational text. The standard reads, compare and contrast the most important points and key details presented in two texts on the same topic. Let's begin with taking some ownership of that standard so that we can truly, start working with it. What does it mean to you?
Well, I always like the 9s in the reading because I know that the subtopic is integration of knowledge and ideas. So it takes the sort of very black and white basic skills that they do in the beginning standards, and then in the integration of knowledge section is where the kids really have to do higher level thinking and actually analyze something. So I noticed that in all the 9s.
All the 9s build upon each other.
Yeah.
So it spirals.
And I think this would be good maybe towards the end of the unit when you have a couple different texts to work with. So,
we're putting in our own words, compare and contrast. We're going to find the similarities and differences. We can kind of simplify the verbiage of the standard.
Okay.
Between two texts.
Between two texts.
Yeah. Key details. The important ideas.
Noticing key details. And anything else?
I mean, they will be trying to figure out the main idea, which is what important points is, and for the
Right.
kids, maybe it should say determining the main idea and noticing key details.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. And I think the same topic thing, do you think that's important that we include that, or?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because
Right, it says up here, same topic.
Yeah. I mean,
So you would just say between two topics, between two texts on the same subject,
Same
if you want
subject.
to
Right.
change the words.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's important because it would be a very different experience if you were doing two totally different topics, right?
Yes.
So let's go down here to box number 2. What is the purpose of teaching this standard? So think about, why do we do this, right?
We
What
do
are they gonna
this
gain
to
from it?
compare two texts on the same topic. They're finding the similarities and differences between two informational
Right.
texts. So they're
Well, I think-
comparisons.
I think introducing them to informational text is a key thing to even kind of back up that now we're reading for information as
Right.
opposed to just reading for,
Understanding.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
understand,
But I
Okay.
think probably the most important idea is that perhaps the two texts are offering a different point of view.
Yes.
So what we're trying to show them is, let's say one article is about sugar and why it's good for kids to eat candy, and the
Right.
other article is about sugar and why it's bad to eat candy. So they're learning to think in a higher level way because they're taking two different points of view.
And even if it's not two different points of view, it could be that, let's say, down the road, as they're reading for information for some type of research report, that they could get different information on the same topic from different texts.
So there's two different
Two-
things.
yeah.
Okay.
So
They're thinking at a higher level because they're looking at two different points of view.
and that's
Or-
almost
or and.
yeah, or period.
Yeah.
Also, they could be gaining different knowledge
from different pieces
Right.
on
from
the same
different,
topic.
right, different knowledge from different
Sources?
resources.
Sources, yes.
Yeah, or sources
Gain knowledge from different sources.
on the same subject.
Yeah, to enhance the overall understanding of that topic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So step 3 asks us to take a look at the same
Previous.
standard at 2nd grade and 4th grade, just so that we can get a quick understanding of that. So if you look at standard 9, strand 9 rather.
So it's right, and I think the difference is that it doesn't have the detail in second grade.
Right.
It just
It's
has
the most important points presented by two texts on the same topic.
So it doesn't have
Right.
the key detail, so that's the thing that they're maybe looking for in third grade.
They're more looking at the
Second
main ideas
Does
of two
not
texts.
mention key details.
Right.
That's really the only difference for second.
Okay. Fourth. Oh, now the whole beginning changes to integrate.
topic.
To write or
Speak about
knowledge.
Oh, all right, so yeah, so
another
the,
writing and
I mean,
speaking.
Well,
you would think it's understood almost like in our, in the third grade compare and contrast that you
right,
would.
that we would write
be
about it,
writing
that would
about
be
it or
the goal.
modeling it, yeah.
Right.
But now it's very specific in this one that they will definitely be writing
Writing it
and
and
or
speaking.
speaking.
To write or speak, yeah.
Yeah.
I would think that they would probably, like you said, write or speak also in third grade, but I
Right.
guess they're saying it's not really necessary
Or
until
not to
fourth.
be mastered until.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fourth grade, it's knowledgeably, so they really need
Yes.
to know.
Gotta sell it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good because it definitely is in the middle of those two things.
So in
recognizing the difference.
assessment-wise, you might think that for the reading purposes, this would be multiple choice, because it doesn't say to write about it.
Right.
But
Now
I
it's more
think,
subjective as the
Right.
grades with the writing.
but I do think they have to write, compare and contrast in third grade, so I'm not sure
Right.
how that goes
Right.
exactly.
You mean a writing standard?
Yeah, in other words, when you read two topics and you're
you wanna write
comparing
about it.
them, our instinct would be to automatically have them write
Right.
the
Compare and contrast.
Show what they've done,
Right.
right?
But assessment-wise, based on this actual standard, if you really think about it, it means almost that you would be assessing it from a reading standpoint, not a
Right.
writing standpoint.
When
Right,
you
like
get to
how
fourth
do they
grade.
recognize how do they comprehend the information from two different places? Yeah.
Right, but obviously, we would want to add the writing on top
You
of it.
still wanna write.
Right.
To get them ready
In
for
third.
fourth grade.
All right,
so-
well, actually, we're gonna get there in a minute because,
We do have
Sorry.
assessment.
toward the bottom, we can kind of take that and talk about how we would use it in practice. So before we move on to the activities, let's just talk about what skills they need to actually master, apply and master the standard. So before, if you think about what do they really need to do in order to compare and contrast, like to the very basics, they're gonna have to be able to
Read,
read and
Read
comprehend
and
each
comprehend.
text, right?
Yeah, so read and, yeah.
read and comprehend.
Like you said.
Two
Yep.
texts.
Two texts, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
They're going to have to distinguish between the important,
Yeah, what is
the main
The main
ideas.
idea and the details.
Distinguishing between the main ideas and the
And
details.
And what are those
Yeah.
details that are actually, yeah, like
Part of
that
the main
key,
idea,
not-
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Not just.
Maybe and other other unimportant details,
Yeah.
right? Like to kind of weed out
Well,
the ones that they don't want to use.
You could just
That's a
say
skill in itself.
main idea and key details.
Right.
And then
Okay.
you don't have to add anything. Because there's unimportant details.
Right.
Right.
But we're not going to include those.
Right.
Okay.
You
And-
also, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
They also have to pay attention to the writing in the text, but pictures, captions, all of those within to compare. Sometimes you compare and contrast when it comes to
Yeah, there may be other information
Right.
within
Non-tech-
the illustrations.
The
So
non-
be able to identify non-text, informational, text features.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
I'm
That's
also
what we're trying to
Thank you.
say. And,
very basic of this is, comparing and contrasting, that, almost like, I know we might be jumping ahead to the activities here, but like, what are some
Apples and
things
orange.
that they've done comparing and
Basic.
contrasting that, yeah, basic. so
well,
that
they have to
we-
know what it
Right.
means for
to
things to be the same
same
and things
and
to be
different,
different,
yeah.
which they sort of know, but the other thing I was gonna say is they need to be able to cite evidence. Because if they're gonna be writing about it, they need to know how to cite evidence.
And even if
Yeah.
even though this isn't within, like we said, that the fourth grade jumps to like writing or speaking, that this would still be, we would want to integrate being like, according to the text, like just that type of.
Right, that's why I
Yeah,
said
exactly.
cite
Showing
evidence.
examples, yeah.
Being able to
Yeah.
cite evidence.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
They need to be able
I
to,
think citing is actually a different
Quoting.
standard, right?
but
Quote,
I.
for example,
But maybe
yeah.
referring to.
Well, when
For
when we
example.
would teach this, we would want them to quote the text,
Right.
I think, because otherwise it wouldn't be valid.
And I
So-
think that brings in another standard, even though we're doing this one again,
Right.
that like, so we'll be,
We can
you
find
can add
those
that
in.
one, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you are kind of using the writing nonfiction standards, all
Mhm.
four of them, to do
To
this.
do number 9,
Yep.
right?
Yes,
You're showing evidence, which
Yep.
is
Right.
part of.
Right, evidence
Yeah.
to support the response.
yeah.
Where should I add the compare and contrast part? Because we didn't type that anywhere. So read and comprehend two
I was
texts.
gonna say, I feel like we're getting more
Yeah.
complex as we go. Let's
Yeah.
get in the beginning,
Beginning,
'cause it's like,
beginning.
you know,
That's
much
the
more
key.
basic, but still.
Yeah,
you
Know
understand
the difference between,
differences.
know the
Yeah.
difference between comparing and contrasting.
And
Believe it or
examples
not.
of, yeah.
I have trouble with that in third
A
grade.
lot of them do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's like something we don't wanna take for granted that they
Yeah.
just know, and it could be a very quick thing, but I think
Apples
that
to
needs to be,
oranges,
yeah,
just simple.
Right.
We also do some lessons with them, which I don't know if it's necessary for this, where we show them what kinds of words to use. Like, however is a difference,
Yeah,
and
incorporating,
also,
I think,
and in
transition and-
addition.
yeah.
Temporal
so
word.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that
no,
would be
not
time
temporal,
order,
yeah,
but
time
the,
order,
uh,
yeah.
They're not time order
Right.
words,
Like
they're
comparison.
compare and
Compare,
contrast
yeah.
words. And
Right.
we do some lessons to,
Maybe
Review.
vocabulary.
review, compare and contrast vocabulary, or maybe that's fine, that's probably fine.
Review vocabulary to explain it, that comparison.
Just
think-
review
I think
vocabulary
sounds
is
good.
sufficient,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Let's go, I think that's pretty good for the
Yeah.
skills,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so for the activity, let's think about if we wanted to teach this in, for mastery, like fully and completely, how would we accomplish that over several days?
I would start off with the comparing and contrasting, just do a basic mini lesson on something simple as part of day one's beginning. That's what
Just
like,
introduce the idea of
introducing compare and
contrasting
contrast.
two familiar things, maybe not even text yet?
No, just-
Yeah, it
right,
could be
right.
totally could be two
No
things in the
text,
room, it
right.
could be, yeah, just kinda gauged an understanding of kind of where they are.
Right.
And I think that's a good spot to maybe even get in the vocabulary we're gonna
Right,
use with
and
familiar things.
Right.
We actually have a grammar book that actually offers a fairly simple lesson, which is pretty helpful for them at this stage.
Brainstorming.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
For our-
that
we can put
is
that,
something
yeah.
that, I don't know if that's,
Yeah,
if
is that
you wanna
the-
get that detailed, but it's in our grammar book, and it's a very simple compare and contrast lesson.
Do they
Um,
ever use a Venn diagram? Like, would we maybe incorporate that at some point?
We
or-
could, we could.
I mean, that's kind of
For-
like what I think of.
for
yeah,
some of
versus
them-
graphic organizer, I
For
think
some of
of.
them, it may help, to
Yeah.
trigger the
They
comparing and
know the Venn
contrasting.
diagram
Yeah.
from the years
Yeah.
before,
Right.
so,
May be helpful.
All right, so compare and contrast two things, non-text, maybe use the grammar.
lesson, if they wanted something concrete, it would be helpful.
Or Venn diagram
Yep.
to organize their thoughts.
Now, this has been something that I've been thinking about, so I actually, this is great because I can see what you guys think about it. As we're sort of forming this curriculum, we get this time for kids every week, and then we have our Achieve 3000, and I sort of felt like I was giving the kids too many nonfiction articles without doing it in a holistic way. So I stopped and said, okay, the time for kids is on whales.
Right.
And then we went into Achieve 3000, and I found a whale article on
Right.
Achieve 3000. So now we have two articles that we can compare.
Right.
And I did it last week, and it was very successful because once they understood the difficult language in the Time for Kids, then when they did Achieve 3000, it helped them so much because there was a whale issue in two different countries.
Right.
And then we ended up having a debate, and we showed the trailer to Free Willy
Oh, nice.
and The Big Miracle.
Yeah.
So you're
And we
bringing in
had-
lots of different.
Yeah, we ended up having a debate about whales and whether they should be saved, or
Health or-
whether,
Right.
is it okay for Japan to kill the whales for
keep whaling, right.
food, because that's a tradition.
Right.
So, I decided that this week, it's Time for Kids is about eating sugar, that's why I said that before. So I went on and I found the one on sugar. So the part that I haven't done, which is why this is great today, is then we need to come up with like an LAT, a question for them to write and compare the two texts, or an RST, I guess it is
Right.
really.
For
It's
the
really, it's an
information.
RST.
Right. Right.
It's an RST.
Yeah.
To compare the two and see what came out of both.
Right.
So that seems like a great way to use this
Yeah.
fair
Versus
amount.
standard.
Right.
Yeah, it's perfect. But again, even just going through that whole thing, like you pulled in 2 texts, you brought in so many other things. It was cross-curricular, you know, like, I mean,
Right.
Free Willy.
with the
Science
Japan being, you know,
Current events.
Social studies.
current events,
Right.
yeah, so.
So it was sort of, but I did it because I wasn't feeling like our science and social studies units were
Merged.
enough.
So
It was
you,
just
you
an-
integrated totally
And
across.
it seems like a good thing to do, and it seems like it's addressing this standard, and
Yeah.
maybe if we started it out small,
Mhm.
Right.
so maybe the first week, we don't do an RST.
Right.
We just do the 2 and
2 tasks.
talk.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
maybe
I
the
think
next
that-
week,
yeah.
we, you know,
So let's map it out. So if you started with the very basics of just you know, comparing 2 things, just to get the idea
Yeah.
out there about, you know, noticing similarities and differences among objects or texts or whatever you're going to use. Day 2,
you might read the
Read the
time for
first text,
kids,
I would say,
right,
yeah.
read
Introduce and read the
text
first-
1,
yeah.
or I don't know,
Mhm.
you know, in our case, I don't know if it's something that we want to use our exact curriculum for 3rd
Right.
grade, which is the time for kids.
Right.
So we could say read the first text, which is time for kids,
Article,
or if we
yeah.
just,
I'll put it like with a question mark.
Yeah,
like
'cause
that's
I'm
an
not-
option
Yeah,
and
like,
something that
for
we might
example,
use.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if there was something else, that would be fine too. Okay, so the first day, read the text. Would you do it maybe the whole class or have them do it in partners? How are you going to check in that they're comprehending what they've read? Have a discussion afterwards?
I probably would have them do it in small groups. and
Speak
try
up.
to- I probably would have them do it in small groups and maybe try to differentiate within those groups to
Okay.
maybe have them identify different ideas
I
within the
think
article.
it also depends how far we are into the year with something like this, because in the beginning of the year, especially with informational text, and especially in 3rd grade,
Very
I feel like,
It's hard.
we really have
Yeah.
to walk them through it, reading it together and like pointing out, maybe read it together, but then let them read a paragraph independently and then,
To find
you
the
know,
main
you know,
idea of
try to
that
like kind
paragraph.
of guide them a little bit
Yeah.
more in the beginning. I know we're
Yeah,
in November, so I'm gonna, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
see.
the nice thing about the time for kids is there is a digital version, so
Okay.
there's a video to show.
Okay.
And then the vocabulary words are, audio that we
Right.
can press, and, I like to have different kids read the paragraphs, and then we talk about it because it is quite difficult. And then there's a quiz, which forces them to go into the text, determine, is it in the head, is it in the book? And so you could almost do the quiz as a
Inferencing.
class, or in small groups,
Yeah.
or let them do it as partners and then go over it. Cause it's amazing how many they get wrong,
And
because
that's a
it's
lesson
so
in itself,
difficult,
that
right?
in your head or
This
in
is like almost
the
like a
book.
little project, it's
Yeah.
like a little unit
Unit.
every
Right.
2 weeks or
I
something.
feel like, I was gonna say, and even reading it together for the first time, so you can discuss and model how to like, you know, dissect a paragraph, and what do we see here, and pointing out the details as we
Voc-
go.
vocabulary
And then
words.
even, maybe on the 3rd day, allowing them to reread it independently,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a
with
good
that,
idea.
you know, this way, they already have it in their head, but now they're practicing it independently, hopefully, you know, using all the modeling that you did the day before, and maybe with some type of group activity where they do the questions possibly. I'm just
Mhm.
trying to
Yep.
also get some different types of
Yeah.
So,
activities for them. So
If
they
they
get
reread the article independently, then maybe they can work together to, and maybe like, you know, these 3 students can work on the first 2
Gotcha, yeah.
paragraphs, right? And you can kind of like break the article up into sections.
And they could
see if
share
can
it.
Get the main ideas,
Yeah.
and then they can share it with the group and
yeah,
see
that's
if everybody
that's a
agrees.
good idea.
Then work in partners to
to present
find
main ideas.
main ideas of
And-
certain sections.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Then
And present, which is always good
Present.
for them to do,
Present
and that's
to
the
the
whole
class, yeah.
listening, speaking part of.
class, yeah.
Getting those standards in too,
Yeah.
speaking and listening.
Right.
You can use
Present
post-its
their choices.
to show.
Yep, they could
They could use
jot
post-its
their main
to
ideas.
jot their ideas down on the post-its.
Do you mean the students who are jotting down their own ideas for their section, or I was even thinking, as they're presenting, the
They're jotting.
observers can jot the notes from
That's a good
the
idea.
I think
sections
both.
of what, right?
I
That's
think
fun.
both.
Okay, so students
Yeah.
will jot notes, or do I want to say notes or the main idea or the
Now, the only thing I'm
main
wondering
ideas of
about
each section?
is, so the
Main
whole,
ideas of each section.
you know, the thing that it's asking is main idea and
The details,
details.
right.
And, you know, like Lucy Calkins has something called boxes and bullets,
Right.
where they put the main idea in the box, and then they make 3 bullets for the
Right,
3
that's what it
details.
is.
So I'm just wondering if we wanna stay with the standard, which is different from second to third, that maybe their jot, now we're bringing in boxes and bullets, which is another skill, but that is a skill. So maybe they're reading those 2 paragraphs and they're saying the main idea is, and then 3 details
Right.
from those,
Right.
that section.
So what if the day
If
that
it's
they
getting
reread
too
it?
big.
Well, I'm thinking with what you said, I think maybe when we, because the thing here is we're gonna compare the two, so maybe when we get to that final stage,
That's when they do the
that might
detail.
be a good idea
That's a
to
good
use
idea.
that. That might be a nice pre-writing and getting, now we have all
Yeah.
this information, how are we gonna
Just to
organize
organize
it,
it all
exactly.
before they're gonna
And I
write
think that
or
might
speak
be
about it.
a perfect spot, what do you think of that?
I think that's good, cause I think it's getting too big
Yeah.
also, the project is,
Mhm.
So students will jot on sticky notes while others present
Present.
the main ideas.
Sure.
We'll just stick to main ideas.
Yeah,
That's good.
perfect.
Okay.
Then they need to go to the lab, and they need to read Achieve 3000.
So I'm just gonna read the second text,
Right.
together. I think we should do that
Together.
one again, like
Yeah.
the
Together.
whole group together,
Yeah,
right?
again, it's, early, and
Right.
they're young.
They need
I
a-
feel
they
like
do
they
need
that
guidance.
Yeah. Okay, let's just skip down for a second and talk about we know that some of the other standards we addressed, I can copy and paste them later. We talked about speaking and listening, some writing standards are definitely gonna come up. Other reading informational texts are definitely gonna be
Yep,
in there,
the
the
other-
citing evidence, right?
Lots.
Identifying the main idea, that's another standard.
And I feel like I know we went past the R, the rigor with the objectives, but I feel like as we were doing our activities, we
Right.
were
The
already
rigor was
starting to
coming
get
in.
into that.
And I
Yeah.
think the big rigorous objective will be that they will write an RST
It's the end,
comparing the
right.
two. That's the assessment at the end,
assessment.
to write a
Mhm.
compare and contrast, which would probably end up being 4 paragraphs, cause it would be an opening, and then the things that are the
compares,
same,
and the
the
contrast.
things that are different, and then a
And the
close.
concluding.
So it'd be a 4 paragraph.
And
All right, so let me, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what you were gonna say, so thinking
Yeah.
of the assessment, I know, I think
Completed.
what Lori said was true, that because of the standard, there would have to be some type of multiple choice, for us to actually assess them on this, according to the standard, for,
Multiple
let's say, a
choice.
grade even, you would want some type of multiple
Multiple
choice.
choice.
Well, the good news about that is it's built in, because the Time for
Time for
Kids
Kids.
has
And
the
the Achieve, yes,
assessment,
yes,
and the
yes.
Achieve has the
Perfect.
multiple choice,
That's
so
right.
they're automatically being assessed on the reading comprehension, and then the 4-paragraph essay would be their,
But I do think that just knowing where we want them to go, that we'd want to see where they are with writing it.
Writing.
And that we would
Right.
probably still want to have them write some type of paragraph
Paragraph.
or 4-paragraph and have a rubric or.
And that'll show that
right,
there's
yeah.
any evidence and
Yeah.
right,
adding.
and we can use the PARC RST rubric,
Right,
because it is comparing 2 texts.
okay. So the multiple choice assessment, which is included if we use the Time for Kids, and the Achieve, would show their understanding of the text, but then we would still need something, unless some of the questions in there are about comparing and contrasting. Like, you still have to get them together.
Right.
You know what I mean? The RST is gonna do that, but that's not needed to master this standard, you know what I mean? Like, we're saying that that would be like our ideal,
Mhm.
but, really, they could do something as simple as, just having a conversation, you could just have a conversation with them, or they could do a Venn diagram, or just look at
Yeah.
their notes, any way that they're showing how
The
the
notes
two
that
texts
they
are
took.
related.
Other
Yeah.
informal
Right.
ways,
So,
yeah.
right, because you couldn't do this every week and a half, it's
No.
too
Right.
much.
Right.
So maybe
You'd
when
have to
there
have
was-
other little activities and assessments.
And
to show.
teacher observation along the way, of
Right.
course, yeah,
Mhm.
yep.
Or they
Which
could
is
make
like
a,
a given, yeah.
they could make a poster in
Mhm.
groups,
Yep.
and they could just
Comparing
say
and
what's the
contrasting.
same and what's
Right.
different,
Yep.
and
Venn
make
diagram.
bullet
Collage and
points.
publisher,
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
T-chart, Venn diagram.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna write poster.
T-chart, Venn diagram.
Or just a list, right? I mean, it could just be, okay.
Or a completed 4-paragraph essay
Right.
as a different option.
Maybe like we had up here, ideas for differentiation, that would be
Oh,
a
that's
high
a good,
level,
yeah,
right?
yep.
So for the higher,
And meeting different learning styles can like be
Mhm.
more artistic, yep,
Mhm.
absolutely.
yeah,
Okay.
okay. Well, thank you for your work today with the standard. I know that we skipped around a little bit, but, I think if we sit together again, we can definitely work on the next 4 or 5 days, because it does seem like, it could evolve to be a good, maybe 2-week project if you did it over, 8 to 10 days. So, thank
Sounds
you.
good.
No
Sounds
problem.
great.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you.